Hello, I'm Shan and welcome to my channel. Today I want to bring to you my birth story when I gave birth to Jameson. I feel like I'm going to be digressing several times throughout this story, so grab your cup of teas and let's get started. So where do I start? I found out I was pregnant with Jameson in the first week of April last year. He was planned and we certainly didn't expect it to happen as quickly as it did, but nonetheless we were so grateful that it did. It meant that I would be 14 weeks pregnant when I was getting married. So during our wedding speeches we told our entire families, obviously apart from our parents, we told our entire family in our wedding speeches, and it was like photographed and videoed and whatever, so it was really lovely. So the first half of my pregnancy I was completely worry-free. I had high blood pressure before pregnancy. It was hereditary, it come from my mum's side, and it was kept, I had to change my medication obviously because I was now pregnant, but it was kept under control. Everything was great. I had a bit of a reaction to the tablets I was on, but I didn't know that it was the tablets causing the reaction. Anyway, I think the first half of the pregnancy, there was so much to be excited about. We were telling family, we were telling friends, we were able to tell people at our wedding. Obviously then there was your first scans and we had a gender reveal, and I was so excited to do his room up. I made a mood board of everything. It turned out exactly how I pictured it. And I had that all done by 20 weeks. And I think for me personally, once I hit 20 weeks, his room was finished. It was ready for him. Everyone knew the biggest scans were over. And that's when the worry set in. And I just want to say, when I was pregnant, I was constantly looking on YouTube and online for positive birth stories because I was terrified. And I told some people that I was terrified, but I don't think I told them just how much. And I think I remember getting some comments like, oh, well, he's got to come out one way or the other. And that's what really put me off, really saying how I felt and how scared and how anxious I was about the end process, because it was like, I'm frightened, I'm not stupid. I know that the baby has to come out one way or another. It's the doing it that's scaring me. And I think as well, once you've had a baby and you are okay with how it happened and it was a positive process for you, some people, I don't want to say think it's funny, but they sort of like tell you their most dramatic, scariest parts of their labour and forget that, especially if you're a first-time mum, you still have to go through it. You have no idea what to expect. And I didn't really want to hear about negative things. So I wanted to make this video for people that are maybe having their first baby or not, and they're on their second or third or fourth, and they're just, that anxiety is setting in. I wanted to make this video to share my story, and I personally found it a very positive experience. So now I've digressed. Like I said, my blood pressure was under control with the right medication, and towards the end of my pregnancy, the reactions, the sort of allergic reaction I was having was finally put down to the medication I was on. So, and it just got to a point where I was like begging for help. The reaction I had was a very uncommon reaction. So I think it was very hard for the doctors to distinguish what was causing it. But in the end, we got there, we realised it was the medication, and we switched it. However, when we switched the medication, I myself, the reaction I was having completely went, obviously. However, my blood pressure wasn't stabilised anymore. it was creeping up, and we were up in and up in and up in the dosages until eventually we got to a point where I couldn't have any higher a dosage. I was at the max, and yet it wasn't at an acceptable level. So towards the end of my pregnancy, I was in hospital for a few days while they tried to figure out something, find a medication, find a dosage that worked for me and the baby. We did find a dosage that worked. It worked temporarily. So they sent me home with a blood pressure monitor. They sent me home with a logbook and numbers to call if it got to a certain number. And I was told, we're going to have to bring your baby early, because although I didn't have signs of preeclampsia, they were testing me for that because of the high blood pressure. They were told, look, listen, we can't risk it. We're going to have to bring baby early. And for me personally, that hit quite hard. And it hit quite hard for a couple of reasons. One, because in my mind, I pictured how I wanted birth and labour to go. And I wanted to be doing my own thing, be in the comfort of my own home, having my waters break, and that excitement of, okay, it's happening now. It's happening now. And the fact that, for me, I knew if it happened spontaneously like that, I would have less time to worry. I'm a massive overthinker, and I would have less time to dwell. And then the panic set in, because I knew I was on countdown then to a definite date. And it was so hard, because when I told, obviously Adam was there when we got the information, but I could see the excitement on his face, that it was like, oh my God, my baby boy's going to be here in X amount of days. And family and friends were feeling the same. And I remember sitting there feeling awful, because I felt like a bad mum. I felt like I was already a bad mum, because my fear was overriding my excitement. And I never wanted to feel like that. I wanted to be like, yes, baby boy's coming. And I was so scared that it just completely overridden it for me. And I didn't know how to feel about it. I don't think, although I spoke to Adam and I spoke to my mum, I don't think I ever really let out exactly how I was feeling. I was struggling to sleep at night without thinking about it. I was going to sleep, purposely putting a different subject in my mind just so I could get to sleep. You know, it was the first thing I thought about when I woke up. And obviously that wasn't helping to lower my blood pressure. At the time as well, there was a midwife crisis in the UK. I don't know if there still is, to be honest. I can honestly say I haven't been keeping up to date with those sort of things. But when I was due to give birth, there was a midwife shortage, and I was hearing horror stories of women giving birth in hospital car parks because there wasn't enough beds, there wasn't enough staff to take care of them. And that obviously didn't help to the anxiety I was experiencing. And I never experienced anxiety the way I did in my later days of pregnancy. I never ever want to feel like that ever again. Anyway, the day came and I was given a number. I was told to ring up at 8 o'clock in the morning to see if they had room to induce me. I rang up. They said, okay, we don't have room right now. We're a bit short on staff. Ring back at 4 o'clock. So I rang back at 4, completely expecting to be the same, thinking, okay, I've bought myself another day. And she didn't say that. She said, yeah, come in, like really casually. And I was like, what now? And I could almost hear her not laughing, but giggling down the phone, because she could hear I was like, what? So I rang my mum. I was like, it's happening. We're going in. I had a bit of a cry. She calmed me down. She was like, you're going to the right place. Everything's going to be fine soon. You're going to be home with your baby. And I had to keep that in my mind, that phrase of, this too shall pass. This fear that I was having will pass. It will pass when my baby is here. I believe that. And it was true for me. So I went into hospital. They gave me an examination and I was nowhere near ready to give birth. Baby was not ready. His head had been down in the down position from about 26 weeks. However, he'd not really lowered into the pelvis. He was head down, but he'd not sunken into the pelvis, and I had not been dilating at all. So they induced me with, let me get this right. They induced me with a pessary. So it was almost like it sort of looked like a tampon. And they put it behind the cervix. Not gonna lie, it was very uncomfortable, but it was very uncomfortable because my body wasn't ready to go into labour yet. It had not prepared itself at all. So yes, it was uncomfortable. But once it was done, that was it. It just felt like when you put a tampon in at an awkward angle and it's a little bit uncomfortable. So they left that in. I was took down to the ward. Adam had to leave, and they left that in overnight. And then it wasn't until the following evening a nurse come back and said, okay, we're going to do another examination on you and see where we are. So Adam come back to the hospital. It was very late at night by this point. I say very late. It was when you hadn't slept because you've been in hospital. I'd say it was probably like 11 o'clock, if I remember rightly. And they took the pessary out, did an examination. They said it had failed. So they did a different approach and went through a little tablet that dissolves inside of you. And again, that was uncomfortable, but the midwife said to me the bones in my pelvis were very small and compact. So she could understand why it was painful for me and why it was difficult for the midwives to get up there. So pretty much maybe an hour, maybe less, after I had the tablet put in, I was having contractions. However, they passed overnight and by the following morning they were gone. It wasn't happening anymore. But my cervix, had dilated just enough to have my waters broke. And I was took down to the ward, onto the room, and this fantastic midwife, she said, I understand that you've been doing this now for a couple of days. So I understand also it's getting painful for you. So she gave me gas and air while she popped my waters. Bliss. For me as well, I asked for the epidural. I wanted the epidural from the off. Obviously, everyone's different. Everyone has their own idea of how they want their birth to go in their mind. For me personally, I understand there's risks, but for me personally, I just thought, you know what? No one's going to come round at the end of this and give me a gold star because I did it pain relief free. So I was like, yes, give me the drugs. Give me the epidural, please. I will have it. So they gave me the epidural. They gave me the oxytocin drip to speed things along, to help the process quicken. And it got to a point where all of a sudden I was feeling contractions again. Even though I'd got the epidural, I was on the drip, I could feel the contractions. So I told the nurse, and they moved me on one side for half an hour or so to see if it is just like the thing they put into your back for the epidural may have slipped. So I was moved, then I was moved to the other side. By this point, the contractions were so strong and fast that I could feel everything, and she'd given me gas and air. I was on the gas and air. And they come to the conclusion that my body was working now so fast that the epidural couldn't keep up with my body. So they just upped the dosage of the epidural and it was bliss again. I couldn't feel anything. It got to the evening. It was 5 minutes before the staff switch over to the night shift. So it was about 5 to 7 at night. And the nurse said to me, okay, let's do one last examination before I leave you. So she did one, and I remember turning to Adam because it was long. We were both so tired. He'd only been given like I don't know why I was under the impression he would have at least a chair that reclined a little bit, but it was like a wafer thin yoga mat that he had to sleep on. We were both shattered. So I remember turning to him and saying, if I'm any less than 4 centimetres, I'm going to be gutted. And the nurse had overheard me say this, did the examination. She said, I can do better than that. What about 10? 10? So I'm ready to push. Because I remember before she did that examination, I was having, although it didn't hurt, I could feel where pressure was. And I remember feeling pressure in my bum, and I said that to her thinking maybe the epidural was starting to not work again, but it wasn't. That was baby's head. He was getting ready to come out. So they did a switch over. I had the nurse that was on the night shift. She came in, she checked all my notes, she set up, and it was time to push. I was like, I can't believe, okay. Then I was worry-free because 1, I couldn't feel anything, and 2, it was like in an amount of probably on one hand I could count the minutes until I meet my baby. And I did 2 pushes and the emergency button was pressed by her very quickly. What happened is Jameson's heart rate had gone to 140, which is a good level, down to 60, I think, like that. So the emergency button was pressed. The room flooded with doctors and people. So Adam couldn't actually, he was up top end. So he was there with me, but he couldn't see Jameson come into the world, if you get what I mean. But I had an episiotomy because he was struggling to come out, which, with what the nurse had told me the day before about the bones in my pelvis being quite small and compact, it makes sense for him to have struggled. But I was also told when my waters were broke, I had meconium in my waters, which means he'd done a poo in my waters. So when he was born, they did the episiotomy, and unfortunately, I didn't get to hold him straight away. He was took off, checked on to see if he hadn't is that the right word? Ingested? To see if he hadn't basically swallowed any meconium. Yeah. And I touched the back of his head as they brought him out. So that meant that they did have to cut the cord. But what was really good of them is that although they cut the cord, they left like a good bit attached so that they could clamp it, and then Adam could still cut the cord like as such. So that was really, really good. And obviously the epidural was still working, so I felt absolutely fine. The next morning, they took the catheter out, and the nurse said, okay, let's try and do your first wee. And this for me is, although looking back now, I found it positive, because really in the grand scheme of things and how things can really switch in the blink of an eye, it was nothing. I mean, my baby was here, it was happy, it was healthy, and I'm okay. So everything was fine. But I stood up to go for my first wee, and I'd not even took a step yet, and a lot of blood came out. I had hemorrhaged, and because I'd been laying down flat, it hadn't come out. So as soon as I stood up, gravity did its work, and I just bled a lot. And I remember the nurse said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I feel a bit dizzy." And she tried to sort of, "Okay, sit down, lay back." But I said to her, "I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick." And I threw up everywhere, passed out. I didn't know I'd passed out until like the day after, because Adam was we were discussing what had happened, and he was telling me things that I was like, "That didn't happen." He was like, "Yes, that happened." And it was because I was obviously unconscious and I wasn't even aware. So because she was holding me, he had to press the emergency button. And I remember sort of coming round, or at least sitting up in the bed, unaware that I'd just passed out. Normal, like I was feeling happy as Larry. I wasn't in pain or anything. I was just losing a lot of blood at that point. And Adam, once all the doctors had left, Adam, I looked over and he was sat in the corner of the room holding Jameson. And what had happened was, a nurse, when all the doctors come in and I was passed out, a nurse had took him over to the opposite side of the room and said, gave him a chair and said, "Here you go, you can sit in there." And that is the first time I have, I think, ever seen Adam cry, ever. Was obviously he was sleep deprived. There was a lot of emotion, and he just witnessed his wife hemorrhage, collapse, and he was put in a corner of the room holding a newborn baby that he didn't really know how to look after, and he was just watching everything happen, everything unfold. And for him, that was really scary. It was a lot. And I remember being so like chilled about it, because I didn't actually realise what had happened at this point. And I was watching him get upset, and I was like, "It's fine. It's fine. I'm in the right place for if anything is to go tits up. I'm in the right place. It's fine." And I was the one calming him down. And it wasn't until afterwards that, I was down on the ward, that I really understood what had happened. So they kept me on the ward for another 24 hours to keep an eye on me, to keep check of how much blood I'd actually lost. And the following day, everything was fine. I was took down to the ward. Yes, I was walking like John Wayne, because at this point, the epidural had well and truly worn off, and I was just on like normal painkillers. But I was fine. Baby boy was fine, and we went home. So he was born on the Thursday, and I went home on the Saturday evening. I was just so glad to be home. I just wanted to get back to family life. I wanted to sleep in my own bed, have my baby next to me, and have a good night's sleep, have a good shower that I didn't have to wear flip-flops in. Yeah, it was absolutely fine. What I'm going to do is I'll put, if I can find any, I'll put some pictures of different stages of the process on in between these bits, so you can see. But yeah, the process for me was incredibly positive. The staff were amazing. I would 100% do it again. In fact, if I had the chance, I'd do it now. I want an army of them. But yeah, I think it was important for me to get a video out there to say that whatever you're feeling, however anxious you are, however scared you are, is normal. Absolutely normal. Because no one is going to do this for you. You are the one that's pregnant. You are the one giving birth. It is down to you and your body to do it. And that gives you the right to be absolutely petrified if that's the way you're feeling, and that's okay. And you shouldn't hide. What I've come to realise is you shouldn't hide how you're feeling either. If people that you are trying to find support and comfort in are not giving you the support and comfort you need, tell them. You don't have to be nasty about it. You just say, "Listen, I don't think you understand the extremity of how I'm feeling, and I just want you to give me a bit more." you know, be a bit more sensitive, because I think being pregnant and welcoming a person in a new person into the world is the most natural thing. And I think people assume you as a mother doing it are going to be okay with that because it's natural. People have been doing it for years. Yes, we know that. We know. But you yourself haven't been doing it for centuries, have you? So let yourself be scared if you're feeling that way. If you're not, that's okay. If you're completely worry free, fantastic. But if you're not, that's also fine. And don't let people tell you, you know, well, they've got to come out one way or another, or what you're scared about. People have been doing this since the dawn of time. Yes, they have, but you yourself haven't. So give yourself some credit, cut yourself some slack, and just let yourself feel how you're feeling. So with that, I'm going to leave you until the next video. If this has helped anyone out there that is nervous about giving birth, then great, that's the object of this video. But if you've enjoyed this video, then please give the video a like, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'd really, really appreciate it. So thank you.